The ceremony had ended an hour earlier, but the feeling of it still lingered in the room. Weddings create that kind of atmosphere. Like the air itself is holding on to something delicate. People were relaxed now. Jackets hung over chairs. Laughter moved easily between tables. The band had shifted from formal music to something lighter. 300 guests filled the reception hall. I remember looking around the room and thinking how strange it was to see so many parts of my life in one place. Friends from university, colleagues, cousins I hadn't seen in years. My husband's family had flown in from different countries. Everyone seemed suspended in that soft evening glow, where everything feels briefly aligned. My father sat near the center of the room, table 4. He had insisted on attending the wedding months earlier, though our relationship had never been easy. My husband had asked me quietly if I was sure about inviting him. I told him yes, not because I trusted the outcome, but because some part of me still hoped my father might choose, just once, to behave like a parent on a day that mattered. For most of the evening he had been quiet. Polite even. Which was why, when he stood up during the toast portion of the reception, no one immediately worried. He walked to the microphone with the slow confidence of someone who believed he belonged there. A few guests smiled politely, assuming he was about to give the traditional father of the bride speech. I watched him reach the microphone stand. There was a moment. A brief pause where he adjusted it slightly and glanced across the room. Then he said it. "She is a gold digger," he announced. The words didn't arrive loudly, but they traveled, just like her mother. 300 people went silent in the exact same second. You can feel silence when that many people share it. It has weight. Chairs stop moving. Glasses pause halfway to lips. I could see the confusion first. People looking at each other as if they had misunderstood. Then the discomfort arrived. My father stood there calmly, as if he had just stated a neutral fact. I felt the sentence land somewhere inside my chest. But not the way people might expect. There was no sudden wave of tears or anger. Just a clear recognition. This is who he has always been. Across the room I noticed my husband had already stood up from his seat. Not rushing. Just standing. The guests at his table shifted slightly, unsure whether they should intervene or wait. I stayed where I was for another second, letting the silence breathe. Then I began walking. Not toward my father. Toward the DJ booth. The DJ looked startled when I approached. Like someone who had suddenly realized he had been placed in the middle of a family moment. He didn't understand. "Could I borrow the microphone for a second?" I asked quietly. He nodded immediately and stepped back. Behind me, the room remained still. I turned toward the guests with the microphone in my hand and smiled. It wasn't a forced smile. Just a calm one. Then I looked toward table 6. "Daniel," I said. A man in a gray suit stood up. Several people near him shifted their attention as he adjusted his jacket and walked toward the center of the room. Most guests didn't know him well. They assumed he was one of my husband's friends. In a way, he was. But Daniel was also my husband's lawyer. He stopped a few steps away from my father, who had begun to frown slightly as the room's attention shifted. Daniel accepted the microphone from me with a polite nod. His voice, when he spoke, was even and professional. "Good evening," he said. "I apologize for interrupting what should be a celebration." The calmness of his tone changed the energy immediately. People leaned forward slightly in their seats. "My name is Daniel Mercer. I represent the groom's family in several legal matters." My father's expression had started to tighten. Daniel continued. "Some of you may not be aware that the bride and groom have dealt with repeated public accusations regarding financial motives during the engagement period." A ripple moved through the guests. "These accusations were documented," Daniel said, "including written messages and recorded statements." My father opened his mouth slightly, but said nothing. Daniel spoke carefully, choosing each word with visible restraint. "Tonight's statement is unfortunately consistent with those previous claims. Because of that, it crosses into territory that has already been addressed legally." Now the room understood. The shift in attention was almost physical. Guests who had initially looked embarrassed were now watching with a different kind of focus. Daniel lowered the microphone slightly. For the sake of the event, he said calmly. We are asking Mr. Whitmore to step away from the microphone and leave the reception area. The venue manager had already appeared near the back of the room, quietly approaching. 2 staff members followed a few steps behind. My father's face had gone pale in a way I had never seen before. Not angry, just suddenly uncertain. For the first time that evening, he looked around the room as if realizing he no longer controlled it. No one applauded. No one shouted. The silence returned, but it was different now. The staff approached him gently, speaking in low voices. After a moment, he placed the micro down on the stand and walked toward the exit with them. The doors closed softly behind him. For a few seconds no one moved. Then Daniel handed the microphone back to the DJ with a quiet thank you and returned to his table. My husband walked over to me. Are you okay? He asked. I looked around the room. Some guests were still stunned. Others offered small supportive smiles. Oddly, I felt calm. Yeah, I said. The band began playing again a minute later, something soft at first. The dance floor slowly filled back up. The evening continued. Not exactly the way anyone had imagined. But later, when the music softened and the guests began drifting toward the exits, I realized something quietly important had happened. My father had tried to define who I was in front of 300 people. And for the first time in my life, it simply hadn't worked.